Tom, welcome to the podcast. Great to see you today in person.
Yes,
as well. Good to do these in person.
Me.
Now we've got a small matter to discuss today, which is the as I would call it, the dying profession, which has hit the press and certainly got some coverage. But before we do that, I'm just interested. You're in between employment at the moment. What have you been up to for the last couple of months? Because I know you were going to go travelling, you were going to see a bit of the world.
Well,
what have you been up to?
Yeah, so I left M&G Wealth Advice at the end of 2024. And so I've had a couple of months garden leave in January and February. I did manage to do some work on the house, which was needed and planned anyway. And I did manage to tick off a few things on my bucket list. So one was the Taj Mahal, one was the Great Wall of China. Both were absolutely fantastic, and I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do that. In the meantime, though, I have been still keeping up with certain things within the profession. So the role that I have as chair of the Apprenticeship Trailblazer Group within financial services sector, financial advice sector, and also the New Talent Alliance as well. So they were certain things, as well as looking for a new role. Yeah. Which I have sourced, and it will be announced
by the time this goes
out.
By the time this goes
out, it'll be public knowledge. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Right. Small topic then.
Yeah.
Okay. So I put a post out on LinkedIn, and really it was to stimulate some debate and some conversation about this podcast.
Yeah.
Save me a bit of time in terms of other people making some comments. Now, I'm going to stick with my assertion that I believe financial planning is a dying profession. But I'm open to persuasion because I see it from a certain perspective. Obviously, I run a recruitment business. We focus in that.
Yeah.
I've been doing it for 20 years and not really much has changed with regards to newer entrants coming in. But when I put the post out, what was your reaction? What did you sort of feel and think with all the comments and all the posting that came back?
It was, well, I'd start by saying it was quite an attention-grabbing headline.
Thank you.
I'm not going to necessarily say straight away I agree fully with it. I think that over the last maybe 10 years since I've been interested, very much focused on sort of new talent and creating a sustainable sector for the future, I probably would have said that over many years. I think over recent years, certainly the last 12 months, if not slightly more than that, things are turning around a little bit, I think. And we'll go through some figures hopefully shortly, which will give a bit of hope to people who are on green shoots. But it was quite remarkable how many comments were made on that post. I think what's interesting is there is a huge number of stakeholders really do care about the profession, and I'm sure that that those things come up in conversations that I have with various people within the sector. So people very much care. There are lots of different debates around it. Is it that we can't source people, to be attracted to financial advice as a profession? Or is it the employers aren't willing to take people on? So I think there were lots of different views, that came across, and hopefully we can tackle some of those in our conversation.
Yeah, I had no idea it was going to get any kind of traction like that, and I think it just typifies the difference of opinion and your own viewpoint. And I'd also say as well that I do think, and somebody mentioned this to me, that LinkedIn is a bit of an echo chamber. That people post stuff, and if you're like-minded, you sort of tend to go, yeah, that's a great idea. And I think sometimes within financial planning, there are people who want to do good, want to make change, and I can see that, but they talk to each other.
Yeah,
and I do feel on the other side of the fence, or the other side of the debate, there are people who, frankly, don't care, don't engage in this.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if I'm looking at it objectively about the future. Is it going to survive? What needs to change? I'm not sure. Did you see what I mean in terms of, I think there's an echo chamber. People are, those who are for it, those who are against it are just disinterested. And I think, but that is probably a large populace.
Yeah.
What do you think to that?
Well, I do think there's an echo chamber point. I think there was a couple of comments, in fact, on the post about there's a lot of talk and there's not enough action.
Yes.
And there's not enough people getting involved and actually, contributing. So it's all a bit of a, getting ourselves into a state around this dying profession. I do think that even those who are quiet, though, don't necessarily make comments. I don't think that they're disinterested or not interested. I think they maybe look at the comments and observe rather than participate. But I get the feeling of almost everybody that I speak to in our profession that they are passionate about it. Yes, there are some concerns and some problems and some, challenges and gripes. But overall, I think everybody is very passionate and wants the sector to succeed. And overall, this is why I'm passionate about it, is that it's an amazing service that financial advice provides to consumers, and it absolutely is absolutely necessary in society that we have a thriving, competitive, wide market for consumers to choose and get the services they need. And we provide, as a sector, we provide fantastic services to those consumers, clients, which helps them meet their financial goals and aspirations.
Let me ask a question personal to you. Why is it important to you?
It's a good question. I mean, I've been working in the sector for 25 years, over 25 years. I started out as an advisor myself. I know some of the challenges. I've watched the evolution of the sector as we go along. I remember back in the old days. I can't believe I say that, but yeah, the old days when
it catches up on you.
Yeah, it does. When I, even filling in a suitability report by hand on the back of the fact find document, and things have just evolved incredibly since then, and I've just kept in touch with that. I think over probably the last 10 years, I've been more in tune with the numbers, which the numbers do speak volumes. When we went through the RDR, the advisor numbers went down to, I think it was about 21,000, which was the lowest point it's been. And if you read up on, there are lots of different sources that you can look at, but certainly even up to the 1980s, there were arguably far, far more advisors. And if you go back, decades before that and various publications, we probably had 200 plus thousand financial advisors across the UK. So the number diminished down to virtually 10% of what that used to be through RDR. Now it's grown back up, a fair bit, and we'll look at those numbers again. But I think my concern was, as I mentioned, I'm passionate about what we do as a sector to society. And it's a valuable profession. And we talk about the advice gap. So actually, we could serve a wider proportion of clients or consumers, those who either don't know about advice or need advice and they can't access it, they can't afford it. There are various buckets of consumers that fall into different areas there. But we could do more as a profession, So even at the moment, my looking at this is, there's lots of commentary about we need 50,000 more advisors and various things. And those numbers have been derived from various sources, average number of clients, the various different advice gaps. But my concern is, can we just maintain what we've got now? So that doesn't diminish? Can we just stay and serve the clients that we've got now as a bare minimum? But really, we should be looking to increase advisor numbers and increase. There's other things we can do: technology advancements, regulatory interventions. They can all help, sort this advice gap. But ultimately, my passion comes from the job that we do as a sector and what we do and how we serve society, I think.
Yeah, and it is a hugely valuable profession, and I think it's a wonderful profession to get into. I really do, because it can change people's lives, and
Absolutely.
I can see it. And I've obviously worked with an advisor. I see it all the time. But not many people know about it.
Yeah.
I'll come back to the number question in a second, but how serious of a problem is it?
Well, there's the supply and demand dynamics, let's say. The supply of advice has diminished, as I mentioned, over decades, and it is now increasing slightly. Demand for advice, again, there are arguments that demand has increased because people are living longer. Pension freedom's created lots of different opportunities, care advice. There's lots of reasons why demand for advice should be higher than it was, auto-enrollment, which will end up with various people with pots of money that they don't know what to do with. So I think, how big is the problem? It's been apparent for several years that we could do more. That's the thing. We know that the metrics around average age demographics is quite stark as well. So various reports, but it would indicate that the average age of advisors over the last maybe 10 years has been sort of 55 to 60 in that region. Yeah. So the obvious challenge then is what happens when those advisors then retire or stop advising. What do we do about the next generation? We need to get a next generation quickly that are going to come through and replace those existing advisors. So, this has been the same commentary for many years now. And hopefully, again, what we'll cover is what we're actually doing about it. What are the solutions? So it's a fairly big problem. We are seeing green shoots coming through at the moment. Advisor numbers have increased slightly. There are some interesting changes happening as well in terms of firm numbers reducing. So, so it is a major problem, and we need to try and tackle it.
There's a lot to unravel, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
Okay. So let me just start with some basics then, because I'm a very, very simple person, Tom. Honestly, the most simple person you're going to meet. I always think if you have a number, you have a goal, it's easier to achieve. So if we agree that the profession has got serious problems in terms of attracting the next generation, clearly the data says there is an ageing advisor population. I guess the question is, how many advisors do we need in the next 5 to 10 years? What should the goal be? Because then surely you could work towards that goal because you can actually see where the advice profession needs to go. So the question is, what's the number? What number do we need to be at? It's
basically to keep the advisor numbers in the UK over 30,000. We need to recruit roughly 2,000 new advisors each year. Now there is a question of how do we recruit them and where are they going, but that's roughly the situation. That's a bare minimum, James, as well. So there are again commentary.
30,000, is that enough for the UK population?
No, it's not. We need more. So we need more, but that's the bare minimum just to maintain what we have now and serve the existing clients that we have, and new clients coming through, which is an ever evolving number, but those who don't need advice anymore and those who then come through to needing advice. So just to maintain our current status quo, we need to recruit 2,000 a year.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And where do you think the profession needs to be, say, in 5 years? Would it be like a number? It'd be great to get to 50,000, 60,000. If we had 200,000, in the 1980s, 1990s, do we need to get back to that level? Do we think 50,000? I always think, very simply, how many people do we roughly need for the UK population? And then you've got to bear in mind technology, AI. There's going to be targeted support. There's different elements coming in as well. So roughly, aspirationally, where would you like to be?
I'd say. You say in simple terms, there isn't an easy answer to the question, but let's say double that number would be no problem.
Yeah.
Aspirationally,
so 60,000.
Aspirationally, if we had double what we've got now, we would significantly be helping a lot more people than we have been, and that's a fairly realistic target rather than saying we go for 200,000 again. Yeah. But we know the figures in terms of those who are receiving advice on an annual basis and paying for advice, which is roughly 4 million. And then there's arguably another 12 million people in the UK who could or should take advice, but either can't get it or don't know about it or whatever. So if we doubled the number of advisors that we had now, that would be brilliant if we could get to that sort of point. Yeah. But the initial concern is making sure that we maintain the status quo of what we've got now, because the numbers and the age demographics don't indicate anything, don't indicate a good prospect at the moment.
Okay. So we've got an aspirational, and it's an aspirational figure.
Yeah.
That's the figure I've just, obviously,
I've kind of plucked out of the air as well, but that, yeah.
But I always think it's good to have a focus. Mm-hmm. But just to maintain, you've got to have 2,000 new advisors just to keep pace.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a big gap there between just keeping pace with the attrition and actually getting to 60,000. That's going to take a huge collective effort. So we can agree on that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. If this doesn't happen and we don't get the structure right, the collective will right, what will be the impact on the consumer?
Well, they won't get the support to manage their finances that they really need. More will then fall onto the state. We know the value of advice. There's been various reports on that those who do get advice are going to be better off and in a much better position than those who don't take advice. What might happen as well is advice becomes even more exclusive. The prices then go up. Only the top, tier of society manage to receive advice. So there are a number of implications. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
People make the wrong decisions with their money. They make rash decisions. They try and do things themselves. They're not don't have the right knowledge and capabilities to do things themselves. So it's very simple that if we don't have enough financial advisors, we don't serve the number of clients that we should be, and we don't support society in the way.
And this is your passion. This is where
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So if we don't recruit the right numbers of people, then it's going to have a material impact on the consumer.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Fine. So let's look at the numbers then, because you've shared some details, and obviously you've got the latest numbers, which I haven't seen. But actually, you mentioned green shoots of recovery, which is a classic term, isn't it?
Yeah.
We need to see that in the economy.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
So can you sort of share those numbers with regards to where we're at the moment? Because having just seen it, there is some positivity out there.
There is, yeah. And I did question the numbers, but the FCA have provided us now with, I think, three sets of data. First one was in August 2022, then February 2024, and then the recent ones in February 2025. The first two sets were the ones to compare. So what we saw from the first two sets was August 2022 to February 2024. So over an 18-month period, the number of firms dropped by about 7%, but the number of advisors pretty much maintained at the same level. Yeah. Now, what that indicated was probably a bit of consolidation, and the new entrants into the sector equaling those who probably left. What it did give us a concern around was that with consolidation, what tends to happen is that the advisors move into those larger firms. They'll stay in place for a certain number of years or a certain period of time before they then disappear and retire or whatever. So it's likely, or it was likely, that those numbers were going to then reduce. We then got the figures for February 2025, which continued to show the same level of decline in firm numbers, but advisor numbers jumped considerably across all age groups as well. So the main weighting of new advisors in terms of the number was in the category of 30 to 39-year-olds. I think you've got the figures in front of you there.
Yeah. That's
30 to 39-year-olds, which is probably down to the average age of new entrants that are coming in. So perhaps a misconception is that all advisors that come into the profession are all young, university leavers or school leavers, college leavers. They're not. It's a mix. There are some young advisors, but it's mainly in that average age of 30 to 39. So, second careerists, people that are, career changers, career movers. So that would make sense that number increased the most. But we do see still a large increase in the over 60s. And we still know that I think it's 254 advisors under the age of 25. That's all. So what the green shoots, as you just referred to, are that the advisor numbers have considerably increased across all age demographics, not necessarily where it should be, but what has happened is the average age of advisors in the UK has slightly dropped, probably around to about age 50. And it was, as I mentioned earlier, about 55 to 60. And I think this is down to a collective effort of the sector and what things, the activities that have been created and looked at over the last year or few. and the attempts that have been made through collaborative initiatives, which have resulted in that number. I do think there's still an impending problem, which is that those numbers could still drop again because of this consolidation. And the firm numbers are interesting. So one of the, I mentioned earlier about having a thriving competitive sector. And I think it's important to have diversity in the different models that we have. And that means, different types of advisors, offering different services, charging in different ways, delivering value in different ways, and meeting different consumer needs. We have to have a diverse range of options available for consumer choice. In our sector at the moment, 80% of the sector roughly is small and medium firms, of the number of firms. And then there's a few larger dominant players. The indications are at the moment that it is those larger firms, A, that are consolidating, and B, that are recruiting, whereas the smaller firms are not recruiting to the same level.
When you say recruiting experienced or recruiting?
Either. It doesn't. Either way, new, younger or experienced or second careerists. But the small and medium size firms are not recruiting proportionally the same number as the larger firms. Now, what that would indicate is if that trend carries on, what we end up is with a less diverse sector with less competition, because we have a smaller number of larger firms and a number of larger firms and less smaller firms. So I think it's important that we maintain the diversity of models and choice for consumers. And in order to do that, we need to encourage those small and medium firms to also engage and invest in new talent, going forward as well.
Yeah. Okay. From a recruitment perspective, which I can lend some advice to and speaking to my colleagues across the UK, what we see with regards to hiring requirements is for seasoned, experienced people, and consolidators need a return. So we don't see the opportunities for younger people. We can't help. I find it hugely frustrating because people will approach my firm or me, and we can't help the next generation because everyone seems, not everybody, that's too broad. There's a real focus on some firms who need to recruit experienced, seasoned professionals because people have been acquired, they're dropping out of the profession, they obviously need that safe pair of hands. That's where we see the demand. And when we have the next generation, the majority of firms, they're just not interested. And I can see that being an issue, which is why I still maintain that the profession is dying, because there isn't the roots in for the next generation. Mm-hmm. And I keep seeing this trend continue. And it has done, if I'm honest, for over 20 years. This isn't new, mm-hmm. but I think now we're getting closer to this. Something is happening. Unless we do something, it's going to have a major impact. But when I say that, what's your reaction to the fact that most of the recruitment done at the moment is looking for experienced people?
Yeah, I'm sure the obvious thing would be that if there is a firm who needs to increase the number of, their advisors and, are dealing with more clients and they're growing, the obvious first thing would be, let's get somebody that's experienced. But that just means that advisors are moving around from one firm to another and it becomes a cycle. Whereas what we have to do is actually invest in new talent that isn't currently within the sector. So the 2,000 that I referred to each year that need to come through, the majority of those are still being recruited, trained, developed by those larger firms. So we need to create some mechanisms for smaller firms to be able to do the same and actually recruit people who aren't already experienced. Yeah. But yeah, I agree that the majority that you'll be seeing, in terms of recruitment demand, will be for experienced advisors.
How do you change hearts and minds, Tom? How do you create that collective will? Because my view is to enable that change, there has to be a collective will across the sector and not the few trying to do it. And that's where I think that maybe financial advice planning has been a cottage industry in the past. You've got small micro businesses, small businesses, large businesses. So how do you go about changing hearts and minds so people start to realise that unless we change, unless we do something, then the advice sector will not thrive?
I think we need to talk about it. I think we need to show a united front. I think, there's lots of, you talked about an echo chamber earlier. There's lots of internal discussions and debates that we have about different models, independent and restricted, fee charging, percentage charging, all sorts of different things that we talk about. I think we have much more in common with each other in terms within the profession than differences. So when we are trying to engage with new people to come into the profession, we need to show a more joined up approach. Yeah. So I would say everybody has a responsibility to push forward with professionalism, doing the right thing, client at the heart of what they do, and demonstrating real, professionalism and ethics. I think everybody as well I do think the desire is there. As I mentioned, I do think everybody that I speak to is passionate about advice. There are a few that maybe are not as passionate. But we need to harness that together and actually, come together as a profession. There are lots of initiatives that are going on at the moment, as I mentioned, and we can talk about those. And I do think there is a change at the moment and a recognition that we need to do something about it. Even, all the comments that you had on the LinkedIn post, it was quite amazing. There's so many people talking about this. It is a known problem, but we do need to do more in terms of actions rather than words.
It needs to be tangible actions now.
It does, yeah. And if we can create, though, as I said, mechanisms for all firms to be able to recruit, to train, to manage, develop, to retain new talent, then I think we'll see a change. There are huge benefits to bringing new people through. They don't have they have a different outlook on things. They'll be innovative. They can be succession planning. They can help with succession planning. They're maybe more technology savvy. They don't have the kind of old regulatory change and baggage that many existing advisors have had. They can be shaped into a firm to work in a certain firm in a certain way. So there's lots of advantages of taking on new talent, and we just need to talk about it more. We need people to engage in the initiatives that we've got. So we'll talk about the New Talent Alliance, for example. We need people to engage in that. We need to inspire employers to actually give it a go and take people on. It's not as costly or as time-consuming as people think, so we need to dispel some of those myths. And a lot of this, again, hopefully we'll come on to the apprenticeships as well,
yeah, we will do,
because we really need to do things not for firms should be doing things not just for their own internal or small interests for their firm. They should be looking at this for the whole of the sector. And if everybody did that and everybody had an eye on the wider sector because they're passionate about it, and I'm not saying people are doing things wrong. I just think if people don't just look at their own firm, they look at their own firm and their own firm's needs, but also the wider collective sector, then we can make a real difference.
Mm. And that's probably, if I'm honest, I question that bit. Because we live in a society. It's very short term. Look at how we live. Yeah, look at how we consume everything, and then try and buy some new stuff which has just come out. It's very short term. So I think many people will be looking at their own business and be looking at their own exit and be looking at the various different multiples on offer at the moment, and it'll be a short term plan to exit, and then what will happen will happen. And some people, they believe that. I think somebody commented, it's a natural cycle. What will happen, it will happen, and then it will be adapted and amended, and the environment will change. So it's almost like some people are saying, well, let it play out, and then we'll obviously amend it and adapt, as time will tell. Mm-hmm. So I do sort of question that shortism, and it was mentioned on the numerous comments that people are very short term, and I still think collectively there's a lot of people who are just thinking about their own needs and their own exit and their own firm for a short period of time.
I agree. I do think. I think that's true. I think what I would say is let's try to encourage firms to to look at things a bit wider as well. Whether they do or not, that's a question. But we need to encourage people to be proud of the profession, and they are. And so if they want to have a legacy and things, then just keep that focus on the sector as well as their own firm. Look at things in a bit more of a longer term way.
Because my view is,
I understand your point.
Yeah, and it's broad statements.
Yeah,
but it's people that I speak to and people that I know.
Yeah.
But my view also is, if you genuinely care about the profession and the people that you look after, then you would want them to be looked after, because obviously the generational wealth will change anyway. So at some point, the children, the spouses, they'll need advice as well. So if you care about the profession, then surely you should be doing something to ensure its longevity.
Yeah, I entirely agree. And the conversations I have with firms is, and again, when they talk about consolidators, for example, they want to, they've built, some firms, they've built up client banks over years and years and years. They have relationships. They have strong, relationships with these clients. They might bump into them at some point, and in the supermarket or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's important that they when they do have a succession plan, that they want those clients to be looked after in the same way as they were looked after previously. So they do care. I mean, it's just that we need to encourage firms to look at things across the sector as well. I think that's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, and I get it. And I think you see it from your perspective in people that you see that genuinely care. I see those people as well. But I also see large swathes that, quite frankly, I don't think they do care. I think they just want to get their return, get out and enjoy their life. And look, fair enough, I'm not knocking that. That's the world we live in. But it's just trying to then build that collective. If you've got a proportion, which I believe is quite high, that just think, that's the next generation's problem.
Yeah.
Like we live in society.
Yeah.
Like we consume all this stuff and they'll sort it out. That mentality, I think, is rife anyway.
Yeah.
So that's where we are. But let's just okay. So we know there are some inherent problems. Okay, we've looked at some numbers. Let's look at what we should be doing to attract people. Okay, because if I look at schools, universities, even my own children, firstly, they know very little about budgeting, financial planning, or anything like that. It's completely alien to them. And then I'm looking at it with regards to, what about career planning? What about universities? What are we doing to encourage, I would say, young people to get into the profession? But also, let's not forget, as the data suggests, that people coming into it are average age of 34, did you say? Second careers then. Yeah. So again, what should we be doing as a profession to really highlight this from universities, schools, to get people attracted and actually start not pretending to be a profession, but start believing and acting like one?
There's a few things here. So this has been something that people have talked about for years and years. Interestingly enough, when I joined the profession back in the late 90s, I did it actually through a careers book. So there was a book of obviously different options for various careers, all the way through from a chartered surveyor, airline pilot, whatever they were, and there was one that was financial advisor, and each of the pages had a sponsor and an overview of that profession. So that was how I got into the profession. That was an individual, a large firm, who was obviously trying to recruit new people from universities. Now that hasn't really happened a great deal over the last, as far as I can see, 25 years. And I know firsthand that people don't understand what financial advice is. I went to a careers fair a few months ago in Liverpool, and we had a stand there, and people, you talk to were saying, I'm interested in getting into financial services. And I'm saying, wow, financial services is huge. Whether it's banking, insurance, stockbroking, whatever. Have you heard of a sector of that called financial advice? No, what's that? Well, we help people, individual people, manage their money and achieve their goals and ambitions. What do you think of that? Wow, that sounds amazing. Tell me more. And I had loads of people contact me after that event. So we do need to get out and do some work around it. And there is one initiative which I'll mention, called Future Financial Advisor, which is actually doing exactly that. It's targeting people, mainly young people, second professions as well, but it's a website called futurefinancialadvisor.co.uk, which is basically everything you need to know about getting into financial advice. So if anybody within the sector now, through their own network, I mean, again, going back to this whole advocacy point and being passionate about doing things for the right reasons, every stakeholder within our sector now should be a professional advocate for careers in our sector, right? Yep. So that's something that everybody can do straight away. You know, if it's your friends, family, your networks, whoever, your social circles, why not advocate our profession to those people? Word of mouth. Everybody can do it. We've got 30,000 advisors. We've got probably just as many other staff as well, you know, administrators, paraplanners, whoever. Everybody can do their bit by advocating our profession and talking about how good we are. We also need to then make sure that we act professionally and ethically. Like I said, we want to show a united front and be joined up. But that message should then get out. And everybody could point to that website, for example. So rather than saying, oh, well, if somebody says, well, tell me more, tell me more about the profession, how do I get into it? Well, go to this website and that will tell you all the different...
Who runs this website then? Who's looking after that and the people behind it?
It started as a collaboration with a few contributions from some of the larger businesses, but that's not the purpose. It's not to try and channel, new recruits into large businesses. It's for the sector. It's for everybody. You'll see it through Money Marketing. They are involved in that initiative, and they're creating at the moment some great relationships and links with schools, colleges, universities, and the right contacts at each of those. So, for example, at universities, there are careers advisors at universities who are targeted to get people into jobs at the end of university. That's what their role is to do. So if the team at Future Financial Advisor are engaging with those individuals, sending them newsletters, sending them information, sending them links to the website, you're going to have more people looking at that and more people knowing that that's a profession. That's a big step forward than what we've had over the last number of years.
Sorry. Yeah. Is it Future Financial Advisor? Is that balanced with smaller firms as well?
It is. I mean, it needed some funding to get the website going. So some larger firms contributed to get that up and running. But the ambition or the idea of that is to recruit across all firms. Yeah. So small, medium and large firms. So there will be some mechanisms in there. So, whoever goes and looks at the website can see the various options that are available to them.
Yeah. So are they advertising opportunities as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And does that tend to be the larger firms advertising their academies as opposed to smaller firms?
It's not necessarily just the academies. If there's networks that are advertising on there, and it'll be the individual AR firms who might have employed roles, for example, who are recruiting as well. So any firms, I think, can advertise their recruitment needs. But as I mentioned earlier, it's the larger firms that are making more attempts to recruit these new people, and not the smaller firms. So we do need that. We'll again probably move on to this. So this part of this discussion was going to be around, how do we actually attract people to the profession?
This is the attraction piece.
But there is then that next piece around, what are we doing from a sector to engage these people?
Well, I think the first point is let's get them interested.
Yeah.
Let's get them interested in terms of the profession,
Yeah.
and then we need to work out the mechanisms, as you say, to retain them and to retain them, train them, develop them, etc. Okay. The reason I'm asking about that is because I might have an idea around maybe having a platform where we can get smaller businesses involved with regards to promoting their own business, their own opportunities, and actually advertising this to trainees as well. Yeah. And I'm thinking a free service. I'm not thinking about a paid for service, because there are things that I think from a recruitment perspective I can offer some support. Yeah. So I've got some ideas around that anyway. Yeah. Which I'm quite happy to openly discuss it, because then I'll be bound to do something with it. Okay. But the point is, I've had conversations with advisory firms and they said this is a good idea. But my issue would be I'm not prepared to foot the cost for doing all of this. There has to be, again, the contribution from the advice profession to help me. I'm looking to do something to give back and to enable people to interact, maybe from a smaller type business, which creates the competition. which I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
So I think I could have that conversation with you, because I think it's something I could do.
Brilliant.
Quite happy to do as well, free of charge. There you go. You heard it from free
Brilliant.
of charge.
We'll hold you to that.
Yeah, but costs need to be paid for.
Yeah.
But I think there's something I can do. But they're targeting schools, universities, and they're going out and trying to spread the word.
And we through that as well, there will be a network of volunteers. In fact, what they did is Future Financial Advisor sent out a message to say who would be willing, if we could get the meeting set up with schools, colleges, universities, for somebody to go in and talk to students, who would be willing to do it. And straight away, hundreds of advisors have signed up for that. And then the professional bodies who have all their own, they also do some of this, going directly to students and young people. They are engaging with people as well, and they've got networks, obviously, of their members. But there is no shortage of volunteers. The difficulty is actually making appointments with schools. But if rather than everybody trying to do that, and a school or a university having multiple contacts, it's useful to have one initiative like this that's really making those inroads and developing those relationships. So to start off with, they were actually creating, careers fairs options, and it was a group of people, including myself, that went along and actually stood with a stand and a table and some leaflets and said, what do you think about this profession? And it's brilliant. It's great to do that, but it is, as I mentioned, it's very unknown, and people think about financial services too broadly, and we need to make more of an effort to talk about our sector.
Do you talk about it from a managing finances? You talk about the product style, or do you talk about the behavioural side of financial planning? Because a lot of younger people are interested in people. I see it in my business. There's different generations. They're more in tune. And I think it's less about the products, but it's what you can do for people to help them achieve their aspirations and their goals. Do you when you have these conversations, do you sort of broadly talk about that? Because I think that's hugely attractive, rather than just the here's a product to serve that need.
Absolutely. It's the latter, absolutely. It's the behavioural bit. It's this profession helps people meet their goals and aspirations. That's the punchline. That's the headline. How they do that, well, we've got various things we need to look at, investments and pensions and protection needs or whatever. But no, it is very much around that. And you mentioned generations and, the way they think. I've got two boys, ages 15 and 20, and I know a lot of their friends as well. I've coached both of their football teams over the years, and I've watched them grow up, and they're an interest, as a collective. Obviously, everyone's very different, but as a collective, they are very, passionate about purpose in life. They really are. It's not necessarily about the technicalities and the even earnings. It's about purpose. They want to do something that's rewarding, that gives back. So if we can give them that as a headline, which is, look, this is a profession that really helps society. That engages them.
You just need to really get that message across and really focus it, and if everyone's an advocate, the message spreads.
It should.
It's a new religion.
It is.
That's what happens.
We should do that. Everybody from listening to this, everybody should do their bit, and they can.
So once you've got people interested and they think, actually, I'm helping people, purpose driven, this is great, this is sexy, always sells, right? Okay. And then they start looking at opportunities. And this is where the problem is. It's like, okay, fine, self-employed. I thought your profession. That to me is instantly a complete put-off. So now we need to start talking about, okay, why aren't firms hiring? What prevents them? And maybe we can give some advice with regards to what they could be doing, because maybe there are some opportunities where you've talked about the apprenticeship scheme. But the issue at the moment is you've got the group interested. They're all now, great. Looking around. Come to me, I can't help you. I'm a recruiter, 20 years experience, I can't help you. I can advise you what to do. This is what I would be doing in your situation, but I can't help you. They're going to find that all over the place, and then the interest will wane. So what do we need to do to make sure the firms start hiring?
So you're absolutely right that is where the problem lies. We are having good success at the moment, more than we've had in the past, not it's not finished yet, but we're having good success in engaging new talent and getting them interested in the profession. It's then when they come in and they go to, for example, this website, Future Financial Advisor, there are limited options of what to do. Now, it's no secret, it's obvious that these larger organisations have got deeper pockets, they've got resources, they've got lots of staff, they've got structured training programs. They are much more resourced, they have the expertise and the experience to recruit, manage, train and develop new talent. And of course, in most situations, they will stay within those larger advice businesses. Where there is a gap is those small and medium firms small and medium-sized firms that I mentioned don't have the expertise, don't have the resources, the experience, and the financial capabilities to replicate what the larger firms are doing. So that's where we need to focus. How do we inspire employers to go, actually, rather than coming to you, James, and asking for somebody that's fully trained and poaching them from one of the other firms, why not start from scratch and do that? But in order to do that, we need to provide them with the support they need as well. We need to provide them with roadmaps of what to do, how to do it, how to train them, how to develop them. Small firms, let's say, who've got somewhere between 1 and 5 advisors, it's a huge commitment to take somebody in and to train them. But you can do it over a period of time. Bring somebody in as an administrator, for example, get them experience, do lots of shadowing, take them through their qualifications, which are clearly a gateway and necessary to achieve, and build up their soft skills. Now, there are the main fears that we know from those sort of small and medium-sized firms on recruitment, the barriers, let's say, is cost. There's clearly going to be a cost to employ somebody. Are they going to get a return on investment? Just to overcome that one, there are loads of things to do in an advice business. So administration and power planning, that should be enough to get the return on investment. There's also then, well, how do I recruit somebody? How do I train them? What training options are there? Yes, we can get people through exams, that's fine. But what about all the other skills that are there? And there's also a concern that they take somebody on, they put loads of time and effort and energy and investment into them, and then their heads are turned somewhere else and they're recruited by somebody else. Because at that point they might come through you and say, "Well, I'm now experienced. Yeah. Can you pay me more?" Yeah. And now that's natural, but I guess the point, well, it depends how they're managed. So they everybody will need to have some sort of level of learning, achievement, future career options, and pay is important as well. A lot of people will have their heads turned because they can earn more money elsewhere. So money is important. Certainly to people who are ambitious and young and got lots to give. So the message there would be pay them appropriately, pay them what they deserve. That might not be necessarily a salary straight away. It might be the future share of the business. They could be the succession plan. Why not start giving them shares of the business or options to take over clients, for example?
It's not really an excuse, this, I have to say.
Yeah, no, I think
I would say if you're thinking that, it's nonsense. You wouldn't take anybody on. You really wouldn't. Why bother?
Yeah.
But I think when you take on, you will get attrition. You will get people leaving.
Yeah.
However, you'll also, if they start from administration, power planning, they're providing a useful service. They're learning. Okay. You can always look at the negative, but look at the positive.
Yeah.
What if you take 3 people on, 2 people leave, 1 person stays, but that 1 person is changing your business.
Absolutely.
Is creating an opportunity for longevity, for succession planning, is actually taking your business into a new direction. Because ultimately, if you think, like, what's the point? Why would you even take on a female financial advisor who potentially could have children?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you start looking at it and you think, well, hang on, you just wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So actually think positively. You will get people leaving. That happens, but look after them.
Yeah.
It's purpose-driven.
Yeah.
Money is important, but there's loads of data out there we supply in terms of what people are effectively worth. They will stay with you if that purpose is being fulfilled. But I do think that I hear it all the time. It's quite short term. why do anything?
Well, I agree. And again, it goes back to that point you made about short-termism. Can we, even if they do leave after a period of time, which isn't great, they may still stay within the sector, which is going to help the wider sector. It's all right.
People won't look at that. But,
they won't look at that, but
broader good.
Broadly, it's a good thing. So there are. So what we need to do is we need to show some case studies of where this has been successful, and it has been successful. There's lots of small firms with some brilliant success stories. So we need to showcase those, and we need to talk about how they've achieved them. We need to provide templates and toolkits for small and medium-sized firms in terms of how they train and develop and manage new talent. It's as simple as, how do you write a job description? How do you interview? What do you look for? What skill set do you look for? How do you know that they're going to be a good candidate? How do you then what? So one of the other things I mentioned I work on is apprenticeships. So we have a number of different apprenticeships within the financial advice sector. Every so often, every few years, they need to be revised. So I'm working on the revisions for some of these at the moment. One of them is financial advisor and paraplanner, which are merging into one apprenticeship, which is called financial planner and paraplanner, which is a kind of core and options route. We've then got the financial services administrator, and there is a mortgage advisor, and also there is talk of potentially having a level 6 apprenticeship. Now, the benefit of apprenticeships, for those who aren't aware, is that the apprenticeships are funded. So if it's a small to medium firm who are not paying the apprenticeship levy, which is any firm who has a payroll of under £3 million a year, don't pay any levy tax, let's say, they can still utilise the government funds. So if they have an administrator, for argument's sake, who wants to go on to become a financial planner, they can pay 5% of the overall training costs. The funding band for that new apprenticeship will be £13,000. So they would pay half of that, so £650, I think. And then the rest of that money is paid for by the government levy. So effectively getting 12.5 grand, which goes to a training provider who does the training on behalf of the firm. So if you're a small, a small firm, you can put somebody through all of that training that you don't have to deliver. You can outsource that effectively to a training provider worth 12.5 grand. They do all the training, all the exams, all the soft skills, all of those things, and complete the apprenticeship. Now, that then, in order to qualify for an apprenticeship, the individual needs to be employed. So I know Rob, who commented on the LinkedIn post, was talking about we need more employed roles. That might lend itself to people going, actually, we will employ you then as an administrator or whatever for a period of time, and we'll then put you on an apprenticeship, which will do a large proportion of the training and developing. Now, that is not something where the employer can just say, well, I'll wash my hands with it and pass them to somebody else. No, absolutely not. They absolutely have to still provide coaching, mentoring, direction, motivation or whatever.
Yeah.
But they can do that. But we need to provide, as a profession, we need to provide those small firms with more information on how this works. And the benefits of using apprenticeships, for example, the benefits of having an employed relationship, and toolkits on, well, what do they do when they're in the office? Because 20% of the time they're doing this training and developing with the training provider, 80% of the time they'll be in the firm. So what do they do during that time? They can't just sit around idly and doing photocopying. Get them active doing certain tasks. So if we can provide those small employers with a list of tasks and timesheets of activities, which will include shadowing and role playing and all sorts of things, then that's going to really help. Yeah.
And who are the training providers then on the apprentice?
I think there's probably around half a dozen training providers who will be delivering that apprenticeship.
And is that for financial planning though? Is it tailored to that?
Yeah.
Advice, yeah.
Yeah, it's financial planner and paraplanner, the level 4. So it would be the level 4 qualifications through one of the 3 professional bodies, the LIBF, the CISI or the CII. And obviously the qualifications is an aspect of it, but it also includes a whole range of knowledge, skill and behavioural competencies. There are around 60 different competencies, all of which need to be demonstrated by an independent endpoint assessor. Now, an apprenticeship is not going to train somebody to the standard that individual firm wants, ultimately. And there is still a gap as well around the competent advisor status piece. So somebody will finish an apprenticeship, but they won't have gone through the competent advisor status process. So we also need to have some support service providers coming through with, modular, packaged.
As in, like, they need to be shadowed and need to be demonstrate they're competent in particular areas.
Because a lot of small firms won't have that capability in-house, the supervision capabilities and competency sign-off things. So they need to be able to access that at reasonable cost and have a helping hand in taking an individual through that process as well. So an apprenticeship is not going to be the be-all and end-all of the golden nugget here, but it's a huge opportunity where the funding and the expertise is outsourced. So you don't have to worry about that. Worry about the coaching and mentoring and nurturing and support that you can provide as an employer. But others can do the heavy lifting of a lot of the basic components.
So where would they go if they were interested in this, in the apprenticeship? Where would they start there?
Just to caveat what I've just said, the revised apprenticeship hasn't fully had ministerial sign-off. It has to go through Parliament, not each individual, but it has to have ministerial sign-off. However, with recent change of government and some updated policies within apprenticeships, they're all kind of on hold. I was expecting it would have been signed off and done by now, but it may still take a few more weeks. Yeah. But there is still a current apprenticeship which was signed off in 2016, 2017, financial advisor and a paraplanner, which are available and are being delivered. So for individuals who are interested, they can go on, I think it's findanapprenticeship.co.uk, and employers can do the same. It's usually the employers that would approach a training provider and say, look, I've got an employee here. Can you talk to me about, how the apprenticeship works? So the training provider is the one that sources the funding from the government levy, and they will arrange everything for the employer, contracts and, the roadmaps for training and everything. Yeah.
So that's positive.
It's hugely positive.
An employed opportunity as well, because that's to qualify, you need to be employed.
Right. Yeah.
And they do the heavy lifting in terms of the training. But
yeah.
The business will have to then still look after the individual with regards to coaching, support, development. It's not all on the training provider. Yeah. You have to put your hand in your pocket.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's good. And
it's really
good.
Good.
People can go and have a look at and take it further.
It's really good. So there's a ready-made training program available now, which employers could use.
All right. Green shoots.
Yeah.
I'm coming around to it now.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
I think we're going to leave here.
I think we're in a coma status.
With a weight off our shoulders, yeah.
Okay. What else could be done to help employers? Because other people said, could the FCA reduce fees? Could there be more done by the professional bodies to have almost like a national entry, like you get this stamp that you're an employer of choice for I don't know, your next generation, and you'll get money off exams, whatever that can be a driver for behaviours. Is there anything that you think that the FCA and those professions could actually do to help businesses employ?
Yeah, I mean, regulatory fees is an interesting one. The most significant fees on firms is the FSCS levy still, which is a significant cost, and then it's PI cover and other costs as well. The way that those fees operate is they're applied at each firm in relation to turnover. So it would be down to the individual firm to choose whether to pass those costs on to their new talent or not. If you again, it depends on how you set up the employed or self-employed arrangement with that individual. But is it easy to just pass that whole regulatory cost over? I doubt the FCA would be, or the regulator would be interested in reducing fees for individuals. But it's up to the firms to choose how they would charge, or include somebody's fees. And my view would be that if you've got somebody brand new that's joined a firm, they haven't contributed to the turnover of that firm. So it's not really fair to to charge them a fifth of the overall regulatory costs. So it would depend on each firm and what they decide to do, I guess. The professional bodies, could they do more? Yeah, they could probably do some sort of discount on exams. I mean, that'd be an interesting conversation to have. But their majority of their revenues, professional body revenues, are through the qualifications that they provide, which are to new people coming into the profession. So I don't know if they would be interested in sort of slashing their turnover. I think a lot of it comes from the employer. That it will depend on how they want to subsidise this. As I mentioned, if there's a funding band for apprenticeships of £13,000, that's the kind of indicative cost of what it costs to bring somebody through and fully train and develop them, including all the exams and the coaching and workshops. But if that's paid for by the apprenticeship levy, then there are maybe other things a firm can do to reduce costs down. Yeah.
Do you think there's a slight tangent? Do you think we need to unburden some of the regulation on these firms anyway? Because I was listening to another podcast and they were talking about, financial freedom comes from when you start to deregulate. When you overregulate, it stifles innovation, it creates issues. And this was to do with the UK. Do you think there could be an argument for the FCA to start looking to unwind some of the regulations, which may be more of a burden than actually a help?
I mean, I mentioned earlier that my view is there's three components to solving or reducing the advice gap. One is recruit more advisors. Two is technology, which will hopefully make the processes more efficient. Certainly the back office and administrative processes, make those more efficient so that each advisor can actually increase their capacity and deal with more clients. And the third one is regulatory intervention. Could the regulator make some of the requirements for advisors a bit simpler? I can't really comment on whether they would do that, but they're certainly, targeted support was something that was mentioned. We have to see how that will play out, but that might be a way of reaching a big proportion of that advice gap through, group almost recommendations to say people like you might benefit from this. And we need to see what the
regulated advice though, because I'm not sure where this now.
Well, that's where
it's changing a little bit. And I'm not sure where we are with how it works in practice.
It is, and it's going to be really interesting to see how this develops, because what they're talking about is recommendations being made on a type, which applies at a group of people level. But do they then have some sort of comeback to say, well, this firm told me I might be interested in this, and it's all gone wrong. Where's my compensation? So that needs to be addressed. But if it works, it means there are just more options for consumers across the UK to have their to manage their finances. So not everybody necessarily needs full personalised advice, is what we see today. The 30,000 advisors that we have. Some people would benefit from maybe some sort of guidance or some targeted support. So if there are multiple options, that's only a good thing, probably, and it hopefully won't take away from those who are delivering the valuable services that they are at the moment.
Do you think that's where the banks might come back in with targeted support? Is it because it's a large-scale opportunity?
It is.
Because they used to be the breeding ground. Insurance companies, when we got into the industry, and it was an industry back then, that used to go to a bank, a building society, or an insurance company, and that you learnt your trade.
Yeah.
Obviously, RDR changed that. But do you see targeted support as an opportunity that this could potentially attract advisors, the new generation of advisors?
Yeah, I mean, there are large businesses that would be the obvious people, the obvious businesses to engage in this activity, because they've got the data, they've got the kind of client banks and their communications to target certain demographics of consumers. It's whether that it's interesting to try and work out how that type of advice would be monetized. So would it be people like you would benefit from this, therefore you can go on to this yourself and self execute, if you like, which means there might be product margins that these businesses could take? Or will it push people into more personalised advice to say people like you might benefit from this? Therefore, if you're interested, contact this financial advisor. So we'll have to wait and see. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know, have any insight, but I'd expect that the larger businesses are the obvious ones who have the capabilities to deliver this targeted support. So we'll keep an eye on it.
See. Yeah. Okay. Opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've talked about some of the reasons why firms aren't hiring. Okay.
Yeah.
And we've gone through, and I think there's some real positives there with regards to the apprenticeship. I'll go back to one of my original points, that the coalition changing hearts and minds. What I'm interested now in terms of is what you're doing. And is it the New Talent Alliance?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just tell me a bit more about that group, your aims, aspirations, and how you're going to support the sector.
Okay. So I think, again, this has been brewing for a number of years, where there has been a lot of this, there's a lot of talk and no action. That's been my view for several years. I have a good relationship with Keith Richards, who founded the Consumer Duty Alliance in about just over 2 years ago. And the Consumer Duty Alliance is a not-for-profit organisation aiming to really support advisors around their regulatory needs and signpost all the good initiatives that are being done across the sector. That now has a number of working groups within it. So one of those is called the New Talent Alliance, which was founded just over a year ago. Keith asked me to chair the New Talent Alliance. That's based really, I think, probably from the involvement I've had with apprenticeships and academies and various things over the years. So we brought together a steering group, which is a pretty good representation of the sector. So we do include some of the larger firms. We also include some smaller firms and IFA representation. We've got the 3 main professional bodies that are part of it and some training providers. So we've got a collective view there. Doesn't necessarily mean that steering group has to, create everything. We'll go out to those who are interested to support as well. What we're aiming to do effectively is engage all stakeholders across the sector, first of all. So 3 parts: engage, inspire, and support. So the engagement part is to say, as I mentioned earlier, everybody can play a part. So if we're all passionate about what we do and how the advice sector serves society, then there is an action that you can do, which is speak to your own families, friends and networks about what you do and be positive and be a professional advocate for financial advice in our sector. Now, is everyone going to do that? No, but hopefully more will than won't. So engagement is important. We can give you the New Talent Alliance, we can give you some key messages of what the benefits are of financial advice. We can create and give you a brochure that you could give out to people if they're interested in financial advice that says, what is a career in advice? What does it look like? Here's more information about how that profession operates, and not just financial advice, by the way, all the associated professions. So it might be mortgage advice, administration, power planning, data analyst, compliance officer, whatever. But everybody could do that. So that's the engagement part. That will hopefully generate more interest, like we said, from people who would then want to join the profession. The inspire bit is the bigger challenge. We've got to engage with with all employers and actually say, look, why don't you why don't you start to hire somebody? Let's show you some case studies of where it's really been successful. Let's dispel the myths about cost and time and effort and whatever the concerns are. And let's encourage people to recruit, train and develop new talent. And if those who decide that they'll give it a go, we can support them. We can give them, the templates and toolkits and the things that they need, the information that they need to make that happen as well. So, again, none of these things are a golden nugget. It's going to be a massive game changer. But this is massively more than we had previously. The New Talent Alliance, though, is going to be sector-facing only. We're not going to try and engage with schools and colleges and universities. We'll leave that to the initiatives like Future Financial Advisor, who are having real success, and the professional bodies. So we're going to be sector-facing. We're just going to be, trying to, rally firms to get involved, to do their bit, and to look at recruiting new talent into their firms. Yeah.
What would be a game changer?
Well, I think if a significant number of smaller firms started, looking at that as an option, is it possible to reach this 60,000 number that we talked about earlier? I don't know, but we've got 6,000 firms across the sector. If everybody took on one advisor, that's another 6,000 that we could add on average. So, specific targets, we don't know at this stage, but I think it's important. We want to just try and get that level of engagement and inspire some of those employers to get involved and participate for the benefit of their own firm, but also the wider sector.
Mm. Yeah, I could see. Yeah, I mean, I'm naturally a very optimistic person. Always have been. You've got to be. Especially these days. Maybe my feeling, and it's just a feeling, that's all it is. There just needs to be a greater collective will, more of a push, a figurehead, an alliance, just more gusto in this to make change. Because these is this, you're a chair, so it'll be part-time as well, I assume. Yeah. So again, it's the energy and the investment. Do you really need something like this where it's a full-time opportunity for a group of people to really get that inspire, to get the engagement, to really get it out there? The people are paid fundamentally to wax lyrical about this wonderful profession.
You're right in terms of part-time. Yes, absolutely. These, the steering group are fantastic, by the way. Everybody who we are working with are equally passionate about what we're trying to achieve. And we've had loads of communications as well from people through LinkedIn, for example, who are interested to know more and want to get involved. But it is off the side of a desk, a lot of this. My contribution certainly, and everybody else. But that's the way that the New Talent Alliance and the Consumer Duty Alliance are operating. It is not for profit. It's not that there is no product from it. We have nothing to sell, and that's the great thing that we can say. We're impartial. We don't have any, agenda here. It is literally for the benefit of the sector, and everybody is in the same position. Could that change over time? Who knows? I mean, could we somehow fund that or something similar? So we have full-time people and dedicated, staff to run this, maybe. But hopefully, if that did happen, we wouldn't want to compromise its impartiality and its agenda, or not having an agenda. It's a possibility, but at the moment, social media and digital formats is a wonderful thing. We can reach huge numbers of people right across the sector, and hopefully, this podcast, for example, will reach a decent number of people who may think, I can do my bit and I can get engaged, and I may decide to take somebody on. So we can do that through many digital means without it being hugely time consuming. And we do have a huge number of volunteers. It's amazing if we went out to, again, conversations you have might be different. I have conversations with any advisor that I speak to. Honestly, if I said, if the opportunity came up, would you go into a school and speak to a load of kids about financial planning? They'd go, yeah, of course I would. Yeah, I'd do. Every single person I speak to would do that. So could we create a mechanism where we create those opportunities to do that? But rather than us arranging a thing in a school, the starting point is friends, family, and your own networks. Let's encourage them to understand what we do as a profession. Let's elevate what we do. Let's be passionate about it. Let's show a united front. Let's show passion about what we do. Let's behave responsibly, ethically, and professionally, internally and externally. and let's see what we can do.
No, I agree. Sometimes I think you just need like an influencer, like a figurehead,
Maybe.
like a Hollywood star.
Maybe.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
maybe
like,
we do.
Tom
Maybe
Cruise,
we do.
flies in and talks about financial planning,
Yeah.
and then you'll get some likes. Probably he's not the right demographic. He's too old now, especially with his kids.
We'll have a think.
Yeah, maybe KSI. I'll reach out to him, see what he's up to. Is there anything else that you want to cover that you felt is important and you want to raise whilst we've still got a couple of minutes left?
I'm not sure really. I don't think we've covered a whole lot there, haven't we? I absolutely. Yeah, I really think we have. It's been a good conversation. I think it's actually been very nicely structured because we've talked about the problem, what exists, the extent of that problem, where the gaps are. Again, it's the larger firms that are doing the lion's share of the recruitment of new talent. We need to encourage small and medium firms to do that as well. Ultimately, all of this is about the long-term sustainability of the sector. We've got a real opportunity. You talked about being optimistic. I'm usually very much glass half full rather than empty, and I think we have a real opportunity to replenish the sector with a whole of new talent and a diverse type of new talent as well. We know that the demographics are quite narrow in our sector at the moment. I won't go into that because everyone knows the demographics. But we have the opportunity to replenish the sector with new talent in a more representative demography than we currently have, which is representative or more representative of the society we live in the UK. So it's a great opportunity to not just replenish the current numbers that we might see a drop in, but actually increase advisor numbers would be, even more aspirational. But it would be fantastic if we can do that, and in a more diverse way. And we also maintain the current diversity and competition within the sector. Competition is important. It's really important that we maintain lots of different models, lots of different businesses that are offering various different services to clients, which gives them choice. And that's what this is all about. And we need to. Everybody should be focusing on that. If they want, people who are going to be leaving, and there may be people that say, "Yeah, I just want to get out and I've had enough." But it's important those that are leaving as well, leave a legacy, leave a profession behind that you'd be proud of saying that you were part of in 10 years' time. So that's what this is all about. So let's keep that message, and let's try and encourage people to do their bit, which they can.
Tom, that's a wonderful monologue to the end. Clearly see that you're passionate about this anyway, and I and my firm will do our bit to raise the awareness, which we do because it is a great profession. So thank you. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Is the profession dying? Life support, I'm probably going to slightly change. I think the data has made me realise that there are some green shoots, and that's good. Yeah. Data's good. That should help, change opinions as well. It's not all bad news, but there is so much that needs to be done, and that collective will and those conversations need to start at home. And you start to do that, it will start to spread. So thank you very much for joining me today. I do have one final question, okay? And this is my magic wand question.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to give you a magic wand. And this magic wand has only got one wish, and you can wish for anything. Anything. What would you wish for and why?
Is this financial services related?
It's a wish. Everyone says what? It's a wish that you can, for anything. It doesn't have to be FS, it could be anything.
So I'd be very profound, and I'd say I'd wish for world peace. My passion extends to not just the financial services, but we see all sorts of tragic things going on around the world. And I would if I could wish for anything, it would be that we live in peace across the world. We're humane to each other.
But I think actually when I asked this question, we did a montage last year. People talk about joy. People talk about purpose. People talk about ending wars and poverty. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So world peace then.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's solve this first. Yeah.
Yeah. One step at a time.
One step at a time. Tom, thank you very much for joining me today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, James.